Hi guys, welcome to Finest Vehicles. Today we will look at unpopular cars that are now worth a fortune. Let's get right to the video. Number 10. The Lancia MonteCarlo. The name MonteCarlo pays homage to Lancia's winning history in Monte Carlo rallies, particularly the Stratos. Group 5 was the target market for the Lancia Beta Monte Carlo Turbo. In 1980 and 1981, it won the World Sports Prototypes Championship twice in a row. Even though the road automobile is a distant descendant of that beast, they have many of the same genetic traits and function brilliantly as a mid-engine vehicle. Isn't this a must in the car industry, enjoyable to drive and simple to own? Because a majority of them had already degraded into dirt, these cars were practically worthless when they were first released and up until the early 2000s. All 1970s automobiles rust profusely, but Lancia, more especially their Beta line, is particularly notorious. So much so that none wanted to interact with these sports automobiles at all. Before they take a closer look, the majority of people aren't even aware that they are actually mid-engined. Since it is now known that these were an exception to the Beta rule, values have significantly increased. An average example can be picked up for around $18,000, and it makes around 81 horsepower. Number 9. The Toyota Supra. Back in the 1990s, Toyota introduced this as a high-end GT vehicle, but not many people paid much attention to it. Its performance was at most acceptable and its handling was never excellent. The Supra's crowning achievement is the potent 2JZ GTE engine, but there's more to it than that. Toyota put a lot of effort into lightening the vehicle. When possible, aluminum was used, together with some outstanding elements, including a steering wheel made of magnesium alloy. The Supra was lighter than its predecessor, despite having all the modern technology, including airbags and traction control. The Mark IV Turbo still has a rather high curb weight of 350 pounds. But a lightweight Roadster was never the intention with this vehicle. It is a terrifying brute, eager to destroy anything in its path. People didn't understand that the 2JZ1 was one of the most magnificent technical marvels ever created until the early 2000s. 1000 horsepower is not only feasible, but also relatively reliable, with little adjustment. Few people, it should be noted, escaped unharmed. For now, an average model goes for $60,000. That model is usually the 320 horsepower turbo model. Number 8. The Alfa Romeo SZ. An unappreciated Italian style and personality gem is the Alfa Romeo SZ. It is a rear-wheel drive, front-engined coupe with an aluminum alloy body. The engine is a 3-liter twin-cam V6 from Busso that produces 210 horsepower and has a 0 to 60 miles per hour acceleration time of 6.7 seconds. It has a 5-speed manual transmission, 4-disc brakes and all-around independent suspension. All remarkable qualities for a vehicle, especially one from the 1980s. The contentious new design language Alfa Romeo adopted was dubbed Il Mostro, or the Monster, at its unlucky premiere, and there was a considerable amount of anger thrown towards it. In stark contrast to the earlier designs, which were all exquisite, this was new and nobody loved it. It was essentially an exaggerated version of what they continued through the 1990s. It is still not often a pretty car, but because there were so few manufactured, it has always been a halo model and is now worth far more than it was originally sold for. Expect to pay around $63,000 for a nice example. Number 7. The Chevrolet Corvette C4. In terms of design and performance, the Corvette is on par with European sports cars, but it hasn't always been the best choice for aficionados looking for great performance. Why is that so? The C4 Chevrolet Corvette might not be the greatest in terms of design and aesthetic, which is always the deciding factor. We've seen automobiles that are exquisite, graceful, stunning and tempting, but a superb car is more than simply good looks. Is it trustworthy, cozy and able to be driven? The C4 Corvette was once so unloved that you could purchase one in a decent condition for just $5,000. If you're paying $5,000 for one now, it's probably broken and unfinished. The cost of a decent, well-kept example is currently around $30,000 and rising. After the long-running C3 model wheezed itself to a halt in the early 1980s, these automobiles, which were innovative at the time they were released, ushered in a new era for the legendary Corvette. Number 6. The BMW Z1. In 1985, BMW launched their Technic division. The activities of this division were to be completely apart from those of the company's regular production automobiles. The employees of BMW Technic GmbH share the same objective, to shape the future. The most innovative designs and concepts from BMW would be realized in a section during the ensuing years, ultimately leading to distinctive road vehicles that would eventually enter mass production. The BMW Z1 was Technic's first undertaking. It was a low-slung roadster with a distinctive door design that automatically slid down and hid itself within the bodywork. However, this was just one illustration of the incredible amount of engineering talent that BMW Technic had invested in their initial design. The Z1 was one of those concept automobiles that, after receiving favorable reviews at the Frankfurt Motor Show, had to be produced. It was primarily based on the outdated E30 platform. Unfortunately, it was more expensive than the Porsche 911 when it was released for a short time between 1989 and 1991. Despite the fact that it won't ever outperform the Porsche, this tiny automobile is absolutely distinctive and maybe more entertaining. Expect to pick a decent example up for $60,000. That example will have 170 horsepower. Number 5. The Honda/Accura NSX. The term "when the VTEC kicks in" is well known to all gearheads. Such is the Honda VTEC engine's worthiness. The VTECs on previous Honda vehicles, though, was ridiculous. Not so much though with the Accura NSX engine. The Accura team designed the NSX to compete with the era's Italian and German sports cars. As a result, they gave its NSX a powerful 3-liter C30A V6 with 270 horsepower and 210 pound-feet of torque. This enabled the NSX to go head-to-head with vehicles like the Ferrari 328 and 348. Honda's NSX, which was created with Ayrton Senna's assistance, made a strong first impression. Even if it was better than or on par with nearly every other comparable priced performance car in the 1990s, it was still a Honda. Outside of its own market, very few people thought it could be superior to a Ferrari. Perception is a major factor. That reality is now widely acknowledged. Expect to pay around $70,000 till $100,000 for a nice example. Number 4. The Maserati Merak. After the launching of its sibling, the Maserati Bora, the Maserati Merak rolled off the assembly line and made its debut at the Paris Auto Show. The Maserati Merak kept the same dimensions as the Bora since it was influenced by the previous design. It also borrowed many of the Bora's frontal aesthetic elements, including the pop-up headlights, the hood vents, and a lot of the rear-end parts. The engine was one thing that the Merak didn't get from the Bora. A V6 engine was coupled to a typical 5-speed manual in this car. Maserati and Citroën collaborated extensively on the Merak's construction. A quick glance at this or the Citroën SM might persuade you that it wasn't exactly an unholy alliance after all. Quite nearly everything is incorrect with these cars due to the intricate hydropneumatic suspension and Maserati mechanicals. Expect to pay $40,000 till $70,000 for a 190 horsepower version. Number 3. The Mazda RX7. As a high-performance, tiny vehicle that is also reasonably priced, the RX7 FD is one of those cars that is a real hit from the company. To increase the RX7's power and fun factor, many owners modify them. The RX-7's FD's production ceased in 2002, but despite this the car is still on the market and is still quite a popular car for a number of very excellent reasons. There are many positive aspects of the Mazda RX-7 FD, including its performance and control, as well as its price. Nobody was ready to the high price that Mazda was asking for the third generation RX-7 while it was on the market. They simply invested a staggering amount of money in its creation. They had no intention of taking advantage of anyone. Today, it is widely acknowledged that it was and still is the pinnacle of what a Wankel motor can be, and unaltered examples are well worth their hefty price tags. Expect to pay around $40,000 for a 255 horsepower turbo model. Number 2. The Porsche 944 Turbo. The Porsche 944 is a rear-wheel drive, front-engine vehicle from the 1980s. It has a 924 base and is available with a turbocharged or normally aspirated engine in coupe or cabriolet body styles. The Porsche 944 was actually very successful back in the day and manufactured more than 160,000 units during its brief career. Despite the fact that it now goes by other well-known nameplates such as the Boxster or the 997 Carrera. Porsche set out in the 1980s to update their lineup and introduce a more inexpensive vehicle. It would be an understatement to say that they encountered some resistance. There are still some Porsche enthusiasts who deny that this is an actual Porsche. The majority of people eventually got over that and accepted the simple fact that these 944 turbos are just pretty terrific sports cars as time went on, and Porsche even began producing SUVs. Expect to pay around $25,000 for a 250 horsepower model. And now for number 1, the Datsun 240Z. The Datsun 240Z effortlessly mixes rough handling, edgy styling and lots of punching power under the hood. The 240Z is regarded by many ardent gearheads as one of the purest sports cars you can own. This claim is very different from how Americans initially perceived Japanese automobiles, as cheap, uncomplicated and to the point. Back in the day, there weren't many JDM imports that would draw attention. By releasing the Datsun 240Z as a sports car that we deem equivalent to models like the Porsche 914, MGB GT or Opel GT, Nissan aimed to shift that narrative. Sports vehicles were anything but dependable in the late 1970s. Almost all of them were in a tune unfit for regular driving in order to meet their performance goals. The only exception was the 240Z. It demonstrated to the world that a sports vehicle could be entertaining as well as useful, but it was still a Datsun. These cars have just recently become sought after because of the expanding JDM fan following. Expect to pay around $32,000 for a 153 horsepower model. Which one would you like to own? Give your opinion in the comments. Did you enjoy this video? Then please like and subscribe for more of the best new vehicle videos here at Finest Vehicles.